Hey everybody, my next guest is a comedy legend and icon. He is a comedian, writer, radio personality, author, actor, and musician. Best known as writer and in-studio comedian for The Howard Stern Show from 1983 to 2001. These days he could be seen on Stand Up Memories, a podcast with co-host Peter Bales, and his documentary Joke Man will be screening next week on January 27th at the Long Island Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame. Here he is, folks, the one and only Jackie the Joke Man Martling. Jackie, how are you, sir?
I'm exhausted after that introduction, but I'm doing well, Don. Yeah, all things considered, I'm feeling great, doing great, and things are rolling right along. You know, this is our first major screening of the documentary, aside from the one we did for family and friends, and a lot of buzz about it. A lot of people coming out. You know, do screen the documentary, then we'll do a nice long Q&A, which should be very interesting. And then, you know, VIP, you know, sign autographs and sign pictures and sell books and schmooze with the crowd and flirt with anybody that's under 75 years old.
I always say Jackie made the biggest blunder in show business history. He decided to enter it.
There's very few people like him.
It was amazing to watch him. He was 2 steps ahead of everybody.
Joke, boom. Joke, boom.
To watch Jackie walk up to the microphone, it's like watching Babe Ruth leave the on-deck circle.
What he does is not credited nearly enough for what it really is.
So the Sunday school teacher says, "Can anybody tell me what the resurrection is?" And the little Johnny in the back says, "I don't know what it is. I just know if it lasts more than 4 hours, you got to go to the hospital."
I remember the very first time I ever heard you on the radio. It was back in the day. It was me and my brother and my dad were driving, and my dad was a huge Stern fan and huge fan of you. And he's actually the one who explained us what you were doing. And I must have been about 12 or 13. We're listening to Stump the Joke Man, or Stump the Comedian. And man, you just... that day alone, you got yourself 2 young fans for life, me and my brother. God bless my brothers.
All right, sir. Go ahead and try and stump the joke man. And what do we have for a prize for this segment? Well, you've stumped us.
Stump the Joke Man, sponsored by...
I need a good gift, not like Jackie's CD or something.
Well, you can have that in addition.
Stump the Joke Man is sponsored by Princeton Ski Shop.
Ah, Princeton Ski Shop, where the true skier shops.
Everyone who stumps Jackie will get a $100 gift certificate to Princeton Ski Shop.
Okay, you're in business.
Starting to sound like a radio.
Starting to sound professional. And go ahead and try and stump the joke man.
Okay. What do you call a gay dinosaur?
What do you call a gay dinosaur? A dinosaur.
No.
What do you call a gay dinosaur?
A megasaurus and a lick-a-lot-of-puss.
A megasaurus and a lick-a-lot-of-puss.
That's right.
Ah, well, you don't win.
Between watching the documentary and reading your book and everything, being the joke man, describe or what's the definition of a joke?
It's any sequence of phrases, sentences, paragraphs, whatever it is to come to a head in a punchline and make you laugh. It could be 2 lines, it could be 2 pages, you know, it could be 5 words, you know, whatever it takes. That's all, you know, whatever it takes to make you laugh. I've never been asked for an actual definition before, but that's as close as I can come, you know.
Yeah, because I think that you understand the mechanics of a joke more than anyone, and that's, you know, I would think sort of being able to know all these jokes, and when people tell you a joke, you can almost figure it out before the punchline, what the punchline is. And I would think that's somewhere in the mechanics of the joke telling.
Yeah, you know, it's a very jokes are very mathematical, like mathematicians and people who are good in math and science and very smart people and musicians are all huge fans of jokes. And because music is very mathematical and very calculated. You know, Albert Einstein was a huge dirty joke fan. His favorite, I swear to God, a guy came up to me at a film festival and said, "Jackie, I got to tell you this. My violin teacher. His grandfather was a very famous cantor at the turn of the century, and he was best friends with Albert Einstein. You know, back in the whenever it was, the early 1900s or whatever it was, you know, the glitter eye was like Enrico Caruso and Babe Ruth and Albert Einstein, whatever. And he said Einstein's favorite joke was, "My dick isn't that big, but I love every foot of it." And that's a true story. That's an absolute true story. And I thought, you know, maybe the guy's pulling my leg, but then they put out that series on one PBS or something about genius. And the first one was on Albert Einstein, and he like married his cousin, and he had affairs with everybody. I mean, he was he's a brilliant man, but he was a dirty bird at the same time. You know, and there's no better way into a woman's pants than a dirty joke. I can tell you by experience.
No, I think like jokes are so. If you go back and I think the very first joke ever recorded in history was a fart joke. It was like some old Egyptian joke that they found, and it was a joke about this guy's wife farting.
The earliest known written joke dates back to ancient Sumeria in 1900 BC. The joke goes, something which has never occurred since time immemorial, a young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. The humor may be lost in translation, but it's still impressive that a joke from over 4,000 years ago can still make us chuckle today.
You go back, they put out it was a joke book from like the year 1200 or something. And there were poop jokes and fart jokes and priests and altar boy jokes. You know, nothing changes. I love these people that say, "Oh, I can't believe this all came out about these priests having sex with the altar boy." Please, that's been around. You know, they built the church around that. I mean, you know, nobody likes to hear that, but they say, "Oh, I can't believe this." Say, "Oh, and it happened in my town too, and it happened in that." Yeah, you do the math. You know, it's the same template. You know, you put all these guys in a house and tell them they can't have sex. All that stuff has to go somewhere. We all know that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And to find the funny in that is brilliant as well. And you talk about timing and math and all of that stuff. And, you know, that there's some people that could tell a joke, like a street joke, and better than others. And how would you equate that? Because you're the master of it, right? You're the greatest to ever do it. What separates?
I always first of all, I hate the expression street joke. I hate the expression dad joke. I hate the expression. I don't even like the expression dirty joke. I don't like the expression joke. Here's a joke. A joke is a joke. You know, if you're telling a story or a couple of lines to make people laugh, that's a joke. And, you know, oh, it's a dad joke, meaning, you know, old people would tell this joke, or it's a street joke because it's like, in other words, it's disavowing it to not be like it's not part of comedy. When it's the most important thing in comedy is the joke. And I hate the expression, "Oh, that's an old joke." Because there is no such thing as an old joke. If I go to tell you a joke and you've heard it before, to you, that's an old joke. If I tell you a joke that you haven't heard before, that's a new joke. And that applies to every joke individually to every single person. If I tell you a joke and you haven't heard it before, that's a new joke. If somebody says, "Oh, that's an old joke," that means they've heard it before. That doesn't mean you've heard it before. You know, if there's 5 people and you start a joke, somebody says, "Oh, it's an old joke." Yeah, that's because you heard it a week ago. You know, it's so funny. I very rarely tell jokes that I just heard because that means it's going around. You know, but if I tell somebody a joke that they heard 2 weeks ago, "Oh, that's an old joke." But meanwhile, I can tell them a joke from 1940, and it's new because that it's very individual. You know, and everybody, you know, people of course tell me jokes all the time, and they say, "Oh man, I'm sorry, but I really want to." I'm like, don't ever be sorry because I've always listened to every joke anybody has told me for my entire life. because I'm like the guy that wants all the marbles, and you never know when you're going to strike gold and hear a joke you haven't heard before. And I was at Governor's the other night, and the guy said, "Look, I know you heard them all, but maybe you haven't heard this one." And it's at the point now where if I laugh, they think I'm being kind, like I'm like, you know,
Right.
you don't have to pretend you haven't heard. I really hadn't heard. He said, "What's the difference between Woody from Toy Story and a priest?" And the answer is Woody goes limp when a boy walks into the room. Okay. And I don't mean to make this priest heavy or a Catholic, you know, but that just happens to be the most recent joke. And that's a really funny joke. And I haven't heard that before. That's a great one, you know. It's just fun, you know.
So is it true?
But the important thing is to get rid of the garbage. You know, that's what, you know, and the timing is not just how quick you say something, how slow. It's getting rid of the garbage. And then I knew all these jokes forever and ever. But then when I started putting my albums together, I edited them. My first albums way back in 1979, they were recorded on cassette, and I transferred them to reel, and then, you know, transferred the best of what was on the cassettes to reel. But then I edited, like with the razor blade and the splicing tape, and, you know, took out the pauses and the bumps and the unnecessary stuff. And in the process of doing that, they wind up in your head in the best possible format. You know, nothing made me crazier than the Playboy jokes. You know, the Playboy joke page, you know, the voluptuous young blonde sauntered into the bar room and found herself a place on a stool and said to the bartender, "Might you?" No. A girl walks into a bar. That's all you need. A girl walks into a bar. Maybe a pretty girl walks into a bar. Maybe an ugly girl walks into a bar. But anything else is unnecessary. Nobody cares what's on the walls of the bar or how fancy it is or how cold or, you know. Right. That's the whole secret, is to get to where you're getting as quick as you can. You know, and of course, the tantamount to the opposite of that is, you know, Danny Thomas can tell a joke and take 20 minutes, and that's his art, is the storytelling.
Right.
But that's storytelling. To me, that's storytelling as opposed to joke telling. Right. I want to tell a joke so I can get on to the next one. You know, and that's just how I do it, you know.
Yeah, you just go boom, boom, boom.
So what would you call a female turtle? A clitoris. Dirty Johnny's walking along. There's a priest walking the other way. He says, "Hey, mister, how come you're wearing your collar backwards?" "Because, son, I'm a father." He says, "Yeah, well, my old man's got 3 kids. He don't wear his collar backwards." He says, "You don't understand, son. I have thousands of children." Johnny says, "You should wear your frickin' trousers backwards."
Do you tag any of the jokes, or do you just kind of one joke, next joke, next joke?
Oh, I tag them here and there sometimes. You know, there's some nights they come off. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'll just say something. But some taglines are built in, and you know, any ad lib is an ad lib once.
Right.
You know, if you ad lib and it gets a big laugh, it stays in. You know, I have ad libs in my act that have been ad libs for 40 years. You know, it's just because it's a line that works to follow up. You know, but you never know when it's going to change.
Right.
You know, people ask, if I do the same stuff, and the way it works is, most common thing is people say, "How do you remember all those jokes?" Because I go up and do between 50 and 70 minutes of jokes. Boom, 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 boom. Just about, you know, I stop for a story or two somewhere along the line. But I'm boom, 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 boom. And they're like, "How do you remember?" and I say, "Listen, when I leave Bayville and I drive to Manhattan, how do I remember to go past every one of those exits?"
Right.
They're on the way. Those are the exits along the way. Now, doing my act, all those jokes are along the way. Now, at any point, I can get off at New Hyde Park Road and go all the way north or go all the way. I can go off my act and go do other jokes and connected jokes or just ramble, and I can just come back onto the expressway where I got off. But I also have the sense of timing that if I ate up some time, I'll come back in the expressway up at Little Neck Parkway, because you know what I mean. I'm making a weird analogy.
No,
it's a linear line that I can go off and come back on at any time. And you know, I tell people you can come see me Friday night and come back Saturday night, and you might hear the exact word for word same show, but you also might hear a way different show if I decide to go off on this or that or the other thing. You know, it's fun, and people people say, "Oh, you had all new stuff from last year," and I'll say, no, what happened last year is you were laughing at one joke and you missed the next one. And then you laugh at the next one and you miss the next one. And then when you get on the other side of that, like you're laughing at joke number 1 and on number 4 and number 7. And maybe next year you're laughing at number 2 and number 8, you know, because you miss stuff and you get laughing. It's you know, I've just been doing this so long that I realize, you know, that's what's happening. And I know another thing makes people crazy. They say, I hate when you tell a joke and all of a sudden I'm laughing so hard. And as I'm laughing at the joke, I'm like, what am I laughing at? I heard him tell that before. But, you know, they get caught up in it, which is beautiful. You know, that's the nicest thing. You know, making them laugh at the same joke 2, 3, 4 times is, you know, that makes me feel like I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Little old lady walks into a luncheonette, sits down and says, I want a hamburger. Behind the counter is a big, gross, fat, disgusting guy with one of these, you know, sleeveless T-shirts, and he's real grungy. He says, burger! And the cook is bigger, fatter, more disgusting. He's unshaven, got a cigarette with the long ash and the flies around. He goes, burger! Grabs a big hunk of chopped meat, stuffs it in his armpit, pumps his arm a few times to flatten it, throws it on the grill. She said, you know, I think that's about the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my whole life. The guy says, yeah, lady, you should be here in the morning when he makes the donuts.
It's also the vibe and the rhythm and you know, your energy when you're on stage. It's infectious and it just becomes like this wave, and especially live. You know, it's great listening to the cassettes and the records also, and everybody could watch your stuff on YouTube as well and stuff. But when you're there live, it's and I've seen you live a few times throughout the years. It's amazing, and it's infectious, and it's a party vibe.
You know, I mean, I'm old. I'm old as hell now, but when I'm on stage, I'm a college sophomore. You know, boom, I'm into that mode, and I'm laughing and having, you know, and I really am having a great time. You know, everything else is shut out for that hour. You know, which is good or bad or however you look at it. Who knows? But it's important to me. You know.
Yeah, I think it's the
fountain of youth.
Yes, indeed. Now I was also
laughs are a youth serum. They really are. They're really, you know, I'm giving to you, but you're giving to me. You know, I'm getting as much out of it as you are. You know.
That's what I love about that kind of energy in the room. It's going, it transcends from you, but comes back to you, and it goes through everybody. So laughter is infectious, and you know, all the old adages people say about laughter is true. It's the best medicine. It heals all those things. It's true, you know, and to be able to be a guy who could provide that for so many people, you must hear that a lot. Like, hey, Jackie got me through a tough time.
I do, and you know, I love the whole thing, and there's so many basics to a comedy show, and especially to laughter. And I gave up saying anything to club owners or whatever, because it's so basic. Like the show, like Governors and Brokerage and McGuire's, they know what they're doing. You know, the tables are right in front there, and they're long and that everybody's seated close because comedy is kinetic. Once in a while, somebody will put together a new club and I'll go and say, what do you think? And like, it's spread out and, and some they have railings or aisles and the people are back 20 feet. And I'm like, you don't get it. Comedy's kinetic. I want to laugh and the guy next to me is going to laugh and this guy's going to laugh, that's what gets it going. You can have a room with a lot of people in it, but if they're all separated, it's just not the same as when they're packed in. It's just it's a whole different thing.
It's true. That's why a lot of those clubs, like in the city with the low ceilings, like the Comedy Cellar or places like that, and everybody's kind of packed in. That's why those rooms, are amazing for everybody, for the performer and for the audience, because, like you said, it's kinetic. Everyone's, in the same moment.
Right. The roof comes off.
Yeah.
Guy's on an airplane. Airplane's taking off. He looks across the aisle. There's a lady breastfeeding her baby. A couple hours later, they come in for a landing. She's breastfeeding the kid again. He said, excuse me, ma'am, I couldn't help but notice you were breastfeeding your baby on takeoff, and now you're breastfeeding him on landing. Is there a reason? She says, yes. I breastfeed my baby on takeoff and landing so his ears won't pop. The guy says, fuck, in all these years I've been chewing gum.
Now, is it true that you got the epiphany for, Stump the Joke Man after seeing Maury, Amsterdam, the human joke machine on Johnny Carson?
Well, it wasn't directly, but a lot of things in your life that you do, you look back. I was watching Carson and Maury Amsterdam was sitting there, and I was already a guy that loved jokes. I don't know how old I might have been in 7th grade. I might have been in 5th grade. I might have been in high school. I don't know. But Maury sat next to Johnny, and Johnny said, so, Maury, so you have a joke about everything? And he said, yeah, give me a subject. And Johnny Carson said, birds. And Maury Amsterdam said, why do hummingbirds hum? Johnny said, why? He said, because they don't know the words. And he laughed, and everybody's like, wow, he really does have a joke about anything. Then when you get to know show business even a little bit, that before the show, he said, Johnny, when I ask for a subject, say birds. I don't know that happened, but I'm sure that happened. And I remember saying to myself, you know what, someday I'm going to be able to do that, but with dirty jokes. I remember that going through my head, way in the back of my head. I'm not sure why. And it was so funny because I told that story to Bill Boggs. He had a show called Comedy Tonight on Channel 5, like in the 80s, I think.
I remember that show.
And I was co-hosting with him one night or something, and I sat down, and he said the same thing. He said, so it's true that you have a joke about everything? And I think he said to me during commercial, I'm going to say, hey, you got a joke on everything? What should I say? And I said, all right, well, say hospitals. And so we came back from commercial, and he said, so you have a joke on everything? And I said, yeah. He said, all right, hospitals. And I said, what's the first 2 things you discover in the hospital? And the answer is, you're not fully covered by your insurance or your gown, which is great. But then I said, Bill, when I first saw Maury Amsterdam do that, I figured that they probably set it up. And, to tell the truth to the audience, we just set that up. You just asked me what subject should I give you. And I really do have jokes on everything, and I really can do that. And it's unfair. It's almost like Mickey Mantle taking a helicopter over the stadium and dropping the ball into the stands, when in reality, he certainly could come up to the plate and hit the ball into the stands. So it's kind of like cheating, but that's kind of funny. But the way that it blossomed for me was I did shows everywhere, and I'm such a ham. I get done with the show, and the crowd is still red hot. And I'd say, you know what? Why don't you try and stump me? There was a comedian on Long Island, Kevin Sullivan, and he used to play Stump the Band. And people would yell out the name of a band, and he'd play a song by them. And he usually have a funny, but of course they're going to yell of course they're going to yell Springsteen, or they're going to yell Beatles, or they're going to yell Eagles, So he had a song ready to go, or maybe even a parody ready to go. But it always impressed the hell out of everybody, which it should. So I'd say, give me a subject, and people would yell a subject. And if it was too specific, I would open up the umbrella. Like if somebody said garlic bread, I would say, all right, Italian food. You know what I mean? Not necessarily every time, but just whatever I had to do to get in the ballpark. And after I did the first couple of weeks on the Stern Show, he said, Jackie, I really should have a piece of business to do with you for when you come in. I said, well, I play a game with my audience where they give me a subject, they give me a joke. And he said, well, why don't we do that, but just with 2-line jokes, because, it's got to go fast. And that's when we did Stump the Comedian on WNBC in the afternoons. And pretty soon we found out that, the audience is going to call in with something that's too racist or too dirty for AM radio. So I wound up bringing in jokes and having Fred call in from the other room as this gender unspecific voice that you couldn't tell if it was a little old man or a little old lady. It sounded like a little old Jewish lady. And he called in with the jokes as foul as we could get. And the audience said that they loved it. And of course I knew every joke. And sometimes Howard answered something because we knew what jokes he was going to use. But interesting sideline to that is it's so funny how people take credit for things and don't take credit for things and things that don't even matter. And when I was in Florida working in Fort Lauderdale, on Sunday nights, the manager would take the night off because we work 7 nights a week. So that was like having a substitute teacher in high school. There was nobody there. So we went wild and we did whatever we wanted. We did each other's acts. We acted like idiots, And Kelly Rogers, very funny guy. He's still around somewhere. He used to do a comedian called Shecky Flemstein. And he'd just be a real outrageous Catskill comedian, which is basically what my act was. So he's goofing on the world. Meanwhile, he's not doing my act, but he's doing what I do. But what a perfect name for a Catskill comedian, Shecky Flemstein. And so then when Fred started calling in, slowly but surely I go, oh, it's Mrs. Flemstein. Oh, isn't Mrs. Flemstein great? Oh, I love it when Mrs. Flemstein calls in. I kind of introduced that into the show to where it was Mrs. Flemstein. And at some point, Howard said, how did we get the name? I don't think it was on the air. I think he said, how did Fred wind up with the name Mrs. Flemstein? And I said, oh, I put that in there because a friend of mine used to use that in Fort Lauderdale. And Robin was like, oh yeah, you did it. You did it. And I'm like, how funny is this? They won't give me credit for something that another comic is mad at me for using the idea that he had. It was like they had me coming and going. I couldn't get credit for what I was accused of stealing. I wasn't really stealing; it was just a stupid name he was using.
Right? Yeah, you just.
But isn't that funny? Oh yeah, you. Oh, it was you. Yeah, it was you.
Yeah,
fat cow.
All right, one final stump to Joke Man. Give Jackie his moment in the sun.
Hey, Joke Man. Joke Man.
Yes, he's here.
How can you make a slow horse fast?
Don't feed him.
Can you make a snow horse?
A slow horse.
Oh, a slow horse.
Slow horse fast. You don't feed him.
I don't get it.
It's a fast if the horse isn't eating.
Oh.
Can't blame me for the joke.
Stupid.
The Stump the Joke Man was huge for me and growing up, and me and my brother would try to do it to each other and all of that stuff. And then then you had it on the Howard Stern show, but that was only on the WNEW days, right? WNBC days.
WNBC. Well, we did it a few times on K-Rock, but it was too much Jackie, so he wasn't crazy about it. When we first got together, the whole, I wrote a book, and the best chapter, I had to pick and choose the chapters that I had written, which ones I wanted to use. And what probably would have been the best chapter is not in the book. And I still don't know what I was thinking, because it showed me being underpaid, underappreciated, not given credit, and being left out. Every checkbox of every complaint I might have ever had, even though it was the most fun I ever had in my life doing that movie.
Right.
But they threw away the first script, and Howard said, "Yeah," because they were doing the movie without me, and I knew that they were working on the movie, and I'm sitting there in the foxhole with them 5 days a week. It was pretty tough to even believe, and then they threw that whole production away. And Howard said, "Listen, we start over with the movie. I didn't like the way the movie was going. They weren't including all of my guys, but." It's his call. That's silly. It's like, Frank Sinatra saved Shecky Green's life. He told the guys to stop kicking him. You know what I mean? It's like that type of thing.
So this is with Private Parts. So this is the first rendition of Private Parts didn't include you.
So what we're going to do is we all sat around, and we had the writer there, Len Bloom, and Ivan Reitman, the producer, director, and all of us from the gang were there, and they said, "Listen, say who you are, what you do on the show, and tell us something interesting." So when it got to me, I said, "I'm Jackie Martling, Jackie the Joke Man Martling," and I hand Howard notes, and it's fun. And I told him this incredible story. If you read my book, it's a story about when I got a flat tire, and they helped me the fans came to the rescue. It was just an amazing story. Awesome. And afterwards, Len Bloom said, "Jackie, that story about the flat tire," he said, "that's amazing. That'll play so good in the movie." And I said, "Len, you knew, you don't understand. That's way too much Jackie Martling. Even though Howard's is the hero and it's his audience that saved the day, it's still too much Jackie." He said, "You kidding?" I said, "Listen, I have tapes of when I first came on the show in the early days. I could give you some cassettes that might help you out." He said, "I'd love that." So I gave him cassettes, and he was thrilled. And the guy I didn't know, who is now a very good friend of mine, called me at the show and said, "Hey, listen, I have a copy of the first draft of the movie Private Parts. Would you like to have it?" I'm like, "Well, sure." And he sent it to me. And there were 2 or 3 pages of Stump the Joke Man in the script. And it was great. Like, the caller asked me a joke and I knew the answer. And Howard's like, "Wow, this guy's good." And then somebody else said, and Robin's like, "Wow, this guy's amazing." And I just smiled because I knew that was, and it was gone. That never saw the light of day, that version of the script. I have those pages.
Wow.
But that was too much Jackie. I mean, if there had been a scene like that in the movie, God, I would have been a superstar. He didn't even hold up my albums. My albums are what got me on the show. And if he had said, "Yeah, Jackie's here because he sent these albums," that would have made those albums, golden.
Right. Yeah.
But that's that, and that's what it was.
I'm very, very honored right now to introduce to all of you a very special man. He's come all the way to our show for the first time, Mr. Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Thank you, Gene. That's very nice.
All right, let's play a game now, okay, shall we?
Stump the Joke Man and there's so many incredible stories about that. I should write a book just called Stump the Joke Man, because so many interesting things have happened. I was at a screening for a documentary, Jim, now I won't think of his name. He's a very famous director. Jim somebody did a documentary on Mike Tyson. And it was a big party after the initial screening. And there's a million people in it, like the hoi polloi and press and everything. This is Jim Taliban, but at any rate, it was a Mike Tyson documentary, Jim somebody, and he's a big joke fan, and he hadn't met me before, and he came up and said, "Oh man, I can't believe it. It's so great to meet you." And he said, I got one for you. And he went to tell me a joke, and I told him the end before he even got his mouth open. He's like, "Wow." So he goes back, and he's hobnobbing with all the people that are there to see his documentary, and with Tyson and her girlfriend and all the sport, and he kept coming back to me every 10 minutes. He goes, "All right, I know you don't know this one." And he must have come back to me 5 or 7 times. This is his big night. This is his big night with his big new documentary, which should be the total focus. He's the focus of everything. But it just was in his craw that he couldn't tell me a joke I didn't know. And it made him, that didn't ruin his night. He said it was a great night because it was such a challenge.
That's awesome.
That's a kind of wacky thing. That's a kind of, people can't believe it. They're always so sure. I had Michael Madsen get on his knees and bow to me. "You are the joke, man." I was at a big, huge, fancy party at the Cannes Film Festival, and he went to tell me a joke, and I told him the end. And before he could drop his jaw, I told him a joke about the same subject and blew his brains out. And then he was like, "Wow," I love stories like that, and it's no big deal. Any idiot could know these jokes. Nobody has ever bothered to except me.
It's the magic of the joke and the joke telling that your career spans you said like about 50 years or so, and all these stories and all the people you met along the way, and all the great moments, all, if you think about it, it's all from the jokes, and that's pretty amazing.
When I first started playing Stump the Joke Man a lot, I stumped Jackie the Joke Man t-shirts. I'll be glad to send you one. You got to email me your street address.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would love that. Yeah,
they're only in heather gray now, and people still they ask me through my website, or they email me or whatever, and say, "Do you still have joke t-shirts?" And I say, "Yeah, they're very expensive because I have very few of them, but I'll be glad to sell you one." And but when I first started doing that a lot, I had small, medium, large, extra large, and double extra large in heather gray, white, and then that fluorescent blue, fluorescent orange, fluorescent pink, and fluorescent green. Green. I had every different size, all these different colors. Plus, we had sweatshirts, white ones and gray ones, and small, medium, large. And then we had kids' shirts. There had zillions and zillions of these shirts, and people would try and stump me, and they'd get so excited if they could, but then they would buy so many of them after the shows that they just couldn't get them quick enough. And I sold them. They cost me like $12, and I sold them for 20 because I just love the fact that people wanted them.
Yeah.
Now, I did a couple shows at Rascals where I said, "All right, you get in free if you wear your Stump the Joke Man t-shirt." You wouldn't believe the pictures of all these people in all the different colored t-shirts. It was just insane. But it was fun. But it was such a no-lose proposition, because I'd be on stage, and the way I did it was I'd have the guys stand up if they had a joke and have the girls come on stage. So I'd talk to all the girls, introduce myself, I introduce them and interview them and insult them and say really horrible things that would get me locked up nowadays. And then we do the game, and I do the guys first and then do the girls. And I knew almost every joke, and the audience would go nuts. But when somebody stumped me with a joke, the audience went even crazier. So it was a no-lose proposition. Like if they stumped me with a joke, the audience went nuts. And with the fact that I knew them all, it was just great fun every time. And people say, "I've seen you 100 times, but I come back just for the Stump the Joke Man." Because it's always crazy.
Yeah, that was like when I saw you a few times. The first time I ever saw you, man, I forget what year it was. Had to be 80s, late 80s, 90s maybe. But it was in Bayshore by the water, this club by the water, and the guy from Ghost, the villain from Ghost. He's a comedian. I think he passed away, but he featured for you, and then you headlined. And I remember my girlfriend at the time got up and tried to stump you, and she failed. I forget what the joke was.
The Malibu Lounge or something like that, or I think that was Joey Cola's gig.
Yeah.
You don't remember the joke? Oh, that's not good.
I know. I wish I remember what the heck the joke was. That was so long ago. That's when I got the cards. That's when we met you and you handed out the cards to us. That was a good time. But yeah.
You know, it's really funny because I know all the jokes, and I really do. And people try and tell me a joke, and they very rarely get through. But I tell the audience, you know, I'm old. I'm old now. So sometimes somebody will say, "Why'd the chicken cross the road?" And I go, "Oh, fuck, I used to know that one." You know,
right.
They fall through. But I used to do the Rascals Comedy Hour. And at the end of the show, I would play Stump the Joke Man. And I was on stage, and I had all the girls on stage, and a girl told me the setup of her joke. And I said, I don't know. I can't believe I don't know, because it's such a simple setup. This is something I should absolutely know. And she said, why do they bury Jewish men standing up? And I didn't know. And the answer was, so the change won't fall out of their pockets. Okay. which is just hysterical. And I said to the girl, that is the kind of joke that is perfect for my act that I tell. That's the kind of jokes I've known forever. I can't believe I didn't know that. And she said, I can't believe it either, because I stumped you with that same joke 2 years ago, standing right where I'm standing right now. So in other words, it's not a foolproof situation. You know, they slip through the cracks. I thought that was so great. Oh my God. Oh my God.
That's awesome. You got stumped with the same joke twice. That's amazing.
Same exact joke, and a simple joke, and a funny joke.
Yeah, it's
the
great.
funny ones. I sometimes people stump me with a joke, and I say, well, I never let that into my head because it's not funny. You know,
right,
but
yeah.
it's just interesting. Always interesting.
So another great thing is, you know, you were on the Howard Stern rocket ship during its peak years. You were there from the NBC through the K-Rock and all of those amazing times that must have been. And so you know what it's like to kind of be a rock star, and now in radio, and now we see the medium kind of turn more towards podcasting, and with people like, you know, Joe Rogan and Russell Brand kind of now becoming like the voices of this new generation. I just want to know, being a part of all of this, what do you think about this new kind of changing of the guard and into podcasts and all
well,
these...
you know, vaudeville became, you know, radio became movies, became television, became shock jock radio, became internet. You know, things just change and change and change. You know, Mark Cuban is in my documentary because in one of the changes that were coming about on the internet, I helped him out. I helped out his company. And this is just what it's gone to. I have no real opinion. I listen to a podcast here and there. I like to listen to books on tape. Rogan, I only met him a couple times, but we're actually in the same movie. We're actually in a really, really wacky movie together. We have no scenes together, but it's called Venus and Vegas.
Mama just hit the big perfecta, and she is hot. Come here. Ooh, Daddy got a hose for Mommy's fire. Maybe trifecta.
Jackie, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and this has been really awesome to have you on. And I think I'm going to go with Tony. We're making plans to go see the documentary Joke Man next week at January 27th. So everybody should go.
Oh, great. Bring
Yeah.
your questions. And
Yes.
did we just go live or is this taped?
This is taped. It's going to air tomorrow. So I'm just going to edit it a little bit and we'll run it tomorrow. And I'll put at the end, I'll put the flyer on there.
Do you put chyrons up while it's going?
Yeah.
Just tell people I answer every email. So if anybody wants to ask a question or harass me or tell me the show was much better after I left, whatever they want to say, my email is jokeland@aol.com. JOKELAND @AOL.com. My Twitter is x.com/Jackie Martling. There's hundreds of jokes on TikTok, but I don't know why TikTok does this, but my address on TikTok is tiktok.com/@Jackie Martling. And and I'm on Instagram and all that stuff. And jokeland.com has all the information of all my gigs. And I don't know if you got any listeners in LA, but I'm doing another screening on February 3rd in Los Angeles.
Very cool.
You know, at an old vaudeville theater. So I'm very psyched about that. So it's gonna be fun. And it'll be really fun if we wind up videotaping the Q&As. We'll see how the Q&A goes. I'm thinking everybody's going to be so interested. Meanwhile, after the screening, everybody will probably just get in the cars and go home. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So you guys, at least you and Tony will be there.
We'll be there. We'll have some questions and we'll have a blast. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
All right, great. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the promotion. And it's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We'll do this again anytime.
You're the best, Jackie. I appreciate you, man. And God bless. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Jackie the Joke Man, everybody. Thank you so much.